Most people think the calmest places in the world are lakes. Quiet water, sleepy docks, maybe a canoe slicing through the glassy surface. But let me ask you this. What happens when an HOA tyrant decides she owns that calm, and you're just living in it? Because that's exactly the kind of storm that hit me the day Karen showed up with her tape measure, her clipboard, and the kind of sunglasses that scream. I write Yelp reviews in all caps. The sun had barely climbed over the pines when she marched down the hill toward my dock, her flip-flops slapping the wood like angry punctuation marks. I had just settled into my chair with a fishing rod, hoping for one peaceful morning. One. That was apparently too much to ask. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice slicing through the still air. "You can't be here without paying the HOA lake usage fee." I blinked, slowly. Lake usage fee. She thrust a laminated sheet toward me like she was serving a court order. Per HOA subsection 9, paragraph B, all lake usage must be approved through me as HOA president and will be charged accordingly. Fishing is $20 an hour. My jaw nearly hit the dock. I didn't know whether to laugh or check if she'd been out in the sun too long. "You're joking, right?" I asked. She crossed her arms. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Honestly, yes. She looked exactly like someone who took herself so seriously it circled back around to ridiculous. But I bit my tongue. Let me pause and give some context. I'd inherited my grandfather's cabin on this lake 2 years ago. The HOA controlled the neighborhood roads, landscaping rules, and decorative mailbox standards, but not the lake. The lake had never been part of any HOA charter. My grandfather had been quietly, privately paying taxes on it for decades. When he passed, his lawyer had slid a single-page deed across a polished mahogany desk and said, "Congratulations. You own every drop of water out there." At the time, I didn't think much of it. Until Karen. Until today. "I live here," I told her. "I don't need to pay you to enjoy my own property." She scoffed. "You residents always think you're exceptions. The rules apply to everyone. If you continue to refuse payment, I will have no choice but to call the authorities." For being on a lake. For using HOA facilities without permission. "Karen, this lake isn't HOA property." She gasped like I'd told her Santa ran dogfighting rings. "Of course it is. Everything in Lakeview Pines belongs to the HOA." "No," I said calmly. "It doesn't." But she wasn't listening. Karen's special ability was ignoring facts with the strength of 10 men. "I'm giving you 2 minutes to pay the fee," she snapped, then held up a bright red stopwatch. She actually brought a stopwatch. I stared at her, baffled. "You know what? Knock yourself out." I went back to my fishing rod and watched her pace up and down my dock like an angry heron. 2 minutes later, she blew a whistle, yes, a whistle, and declared, "Time's up." Then, with the theatrics of a villain in a low-budget soap opera, she dialed 911. "Hello, I'd like to report a trespasser illegally using HOA property," she said loudly, making sure I heard every word. "He's refusing to follow community rules and is becoming aggressive." I wasn't even looking at her. I was literally minding my own business, watching a dragonfly land on the tip of my rod. But logic wasn't invited to this saga. Within minutes, a sheriff's boat approached the dock. Sheriff Miller stepped off, a tall man with a belly that spoke of decades of roadside diner pies. "Morning, Mark," he greeted me. "Morning, Sheriff." Karen shoved her way between us. "I demand you remove him immediately." Sheriff Miller sighed. What seems to be the problem?" "He is using HOA lake property without paying the required fee." She pointed at me as if I were a felon caught mid-heist, reeling in trout like stolen gold. The sheriff rubbed his temples. "Karen, we've been over this. The HOA doesn't have jurisdiction over the lake." "Yes, we do," she screeched. "I am the president. I make the rules." The sheriff turned to me with an apologetic shrug. "You want to handle this?" I nodded. It was time. I stood up, brushed off my hands, and pulled a folded document from my backpack. My grandfather had told me to always keep a copy nearby. "For when the idiots inevitably rise," he'd said. "Wise man." "Karen," I said as gently as I could muster, "this is a deed to the lake." She squinted at it. What am I looking at? A legal document that states I own this lake. She snatched it from me and scanned it, her eyes growing wider and wider until she looked like a cartoon owl. This can't be right. This is impossible. It's counter-recorded, Sheriff Miller added. I verified it last year when you tried to ticket the canoe rental guy. That man was operating a business without HOA approval. That man was Mark, the sheriff said, pointing at me. Her mouth fell open in horror. I need to make some calls, she muttered, stumbling backward like someone realizing they just insulted the chef who cooked their entire meal. She practically ran up the hill, her flip-flops flapping behind her as though trying to escape the situation themselves. Sheriff Miller chuckled. I'll leave you to it. Good luck, Mark. But here's the thing. I had a sinking suspicion this wasn't over. When Karen's pride took a hit, it didn't bruise. It detonated. The next week, it began. At 6 a.m., I woke to the sound of metal scraping pavement. Karen was dragging large orange traffic cones and positioning them across my driveway. I stepped outside. Morning, Karen. She didn't even look at me. Road maintenance, she said briskly. You'll need to pay the HOA road obstruction fee to move your vehicle. There's no such thing. There's now. I took a deep breath. Karen, are you seriously doing this? She whirled around, eyes blazing. You embarrassed me in front of law enforcement. You humiliated me. People are questioning my authority. Do you know how difficult that makes my job? Your job, I said slowly, is not to invent fake rules to harass people. She sneered. I will not be disrespected. If I can't control the lake, I'll control everything else. It was like dealing with a toddler who had been told no for the first time. Over the next several days, she escalated. A noise violation notice when I closed my truck door too loudly. A yard noncompliance warning because a single pine cone lay on my lawn. A dock color inconsistency citation because my wood stain didn't match the HOA-approved shade of birch serenity. Every day she doubled down, pushing, threatening, escalating. And that's when I realized something important. Karen only understood one language, consequences. My grandfather had once said, owning a lake is a responsibility, but it's also leverage. It echoed in my mind as I stared out at the water that evening, the sunset turning the surface gold. If Karen wanted a battle of authority, she was about to get one, and I had the ultimate upper hand. The question was, to bring her down, how far was I willing to go? Karen had no idea how deep a hole she was digging for herself. Every bogus citation she taped to my door, every new fee she invented, every time she strutted past my house like a self-appointed dictator, it all stacked up like dry tinder waiting for the spark. And I already had the match. But revenge, the good kind, the kind that lands and stays, takes patience. So I let her keep going. Let her inflate herself like a blowfish ready to explode. Let the neighborhood watch quietly from their porches, whispering about how she had finally gone too far. Because everyone had a Karen story. The retired couple 2 houses down, she'd fined them for excessive bird activity because they kept feeders in their yard. The single mom on Maple Street, Karen issued a violation because her daughter drew a chalk hopscotch grid that clashed with HOA aesthetic standards. Even the mailman avoided her house. Rumor was she once threatened to have him reassigned for postal misconduct when her Amazon package arrived a day late. Karen had reigned unchecked for years, but now she picked a fight with the wrong guy. And more importantly, with the wrong property. 3 days after her dark color inconsistency citation, I set my plan in motion. I sent an email to the entire HOA membership list. Karen, in her infinite arrogance, had included me on it when she welcomed me as a compliant resident. The subject line read, Lake Access Announcement, Important Changes. Within an hour, replies were pouring in. Is this legit? What changes? Did Karen approve this? Why was Karen not CC'd? She wasn't CC'd because I didn't need her approval, and because she wasn't going to like what came next. That afternoon, I held an open meeting on my dock. People arrived with lawn chairs, folding stools, even paddleboards. Some brought lemonade. Someone brought popcorn. Neighbors who hadn't spoken to one another in months gathered shoulder to shoulder, buzzing with curiosity. Karen arrived last. She stormed down the hill, clipboard in hand, lips tightly pressed into a line. "What is the meaning of this unauthorized assembly?" she demanded. "Have a seat," I said calmly. "I will not." "Great. Standing works too." She sputtered, but she stayed. I cleared my throat. "Thank you all for coming. I wanted to share some updates regarding lake access, maintenance, and future plans." "Future plans?" Karen barked. "There are no future plans. The lake is under HOA jurisdiction." "It isn't," I said. Karen's face reddened. "This again? We have discussed." "No," I interrupted. "You've declared. You haven't listened." The crowd murmured. I lifted a folder thick with papers. "I've spoken with my attorney, the county assessor, and the environmental board. I have full, clear ownership of this lake. But until recently, I didn't intend to change anything about how it's enjoyed here. I figured if people wanted to fish, kayak, or swim, why not? It's a community, right?" Nods from the crowd. "But," I continued, letting the word hang dramatically over the water, "given recent events, I've made some decisions." Karen's eyes widened. "You can't make decisions. You can't." "Karen," I said, "please allow me to finish." She clamped her mouth shut. "Barely." I held up a new laminated page, the same quality Karen used for her fake fees, just to drive home the point. "New lake regulations effective immediately authorized and signed by Mark Ellis, lake owner." I read them aloud. 1. All HOA-issued lake citations, fees, and rules are null and void. A cheer rippled through the crowd. Karen's jaw tightened. 2. Any attempt to enforce HOA authority on the lake, its shores, docks, or watercraft will be considered harassment and trespassing. More cheers. Karen looked like she was going to burst a blood vessel. 3. All HOA officers and board members must request written permission from me before hosting events near, on, or adjacent to the lake. A man in the back hollered, "Take that, Karen!" But I wasn't done. I turned to face her directly. "And finally," she inhaled sharply, "4. Effective immediately, the HOA president is banned from this lake pending a formal review of misconduct toward residents." Karen shrieked. Not yelled, not protested. Shrieked, like a kettle if kettles could feel personally attacked. "You can't ban me," she screeched. "I'm the HOA president. I have rights." "You have HOA rights," I said, "but you don't have lake rights. Never did." The crowd erupted, half in laughter, half in applause. Someone even whistled. Karen spun in place, pointing wildly at everyone. "You're all complicit in this. This is a mutiny against the HOA." A teenager shouted, then walked the plank, and the crowd howled. Karen stumped up the hill, muttering threats about higher authorities and board interventions. I wasn't worried, because the best part of my plan hadn't even happened yet. The next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the county against the HOA for harassment, misuse of authority, and an authorized collection of fees on private property. I attached every fake ticket Karen had given me. 2 days later, the county inspector visited, then the sheriff, then a legal advisor from the State Homeowners Association Bureau. And every time they asked to speak to Karen, she grew more frantic. She tried to claim the lake deed was fake. The county confirmed it wasn't. She tried to claim the HOA charter superseded county law. It didn't. She tried to say I forged all the tickets to frame her. I had security camera footage. Lots of it. And then came the discovery that broke her. Karen had been pocketing HOA fees for years. The decorative mailbox compliance fines, Karen's personal vacation fund, the yard violation charges, her spa trips, the emergency road repair fee, her new patio furniture. When the board learned where their money had gone, they called an emergency meeting. Without inviting her, I went fishing. From my dock, I could see their clubhouse. People filed in quietly. Karen stormed in loudly. The meeting lasted 4 hours. When it ended, Karen came out screaming about betrayal, about injustice, about conspiracies, but the paper in her hand said everything. Removal of HOA president effective immediately. All privileges revoked. Pending legal review. The neighborhood watched a meltdown in uncomfortable silence. She threw her clipboard. She kicked over a planter. She screamed into the sky like she expected the heavens to give her back her authority. They didn't. That evening, as the sun dipped low and dragonflies skimmed the lake, Karen appeared at the edge of my property. Not storming, not yelling, just standing there, small and defeated. "Can I talk to you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I set down my fishing rod. "Sure." She walked closer, but not onto the dock. "Not anymore." "I didn't know," she said quietly. "About the lake." "I told you," I reminded her gently. I thought I had to be in control, that if I didn't enforce rules, everything would fall apart. "You went too far," I said. "Way too far." She nodded, eyes shiny. "They hate me now." "They don't hate you," I said. They had just relieved to finally breathe. For a long moment, Karen stared at the water, the surface calm again. "Is there—" She hesitated. "Any chance I could just sit on the dock?" "Not as HOA president, just as a person." I considered it. Revenge had been satisfying, thoroughly so, but it wasn't about destroying her. It was about stopping her. "Yeah," I said finally. "You can sit." She exhaled in relief and stepped onto the dock, slowly, carefully, as though stepping into a new version of herself. We sat in silence, the lake gently lapping at the posts. And for the first time since I'd met her, Karen seemed human. Not a tyrant, not a villain, just someone who'd lost her way, and maybe now found her footing again. "Mark?" she asked softly. "Yes." "Do you ever regret owning the lake?" I smiled. Only when people try to tell me I don't. She laughed, a real laugh, small but genuine. And just like that, the lake was quiet again.